How did what happened to Jezebel in 2 Kings 9 fulfill the word of the Lord? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Kings on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 2 Kings chapter 9, verses 27 to 37. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 27. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Kings chapter 9, beginning at verse 27. But when Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw this, he fled by the road to Beth-hagen. So Jehu pursued him and said, "Shoot him also in the chariot." And when they shot him at the ascent of Gur, which is by Ibleam, then he fled to Megiddo and died there. And his servant carried him in the chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his tomb with his fathers in the city of David. In the 11th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah had become king over Judah. Now when Jehu had come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it. And she put paint on her eyes and adorned her head and looked through a window. Then as Jehu entered at the gate, she said, "Is it peace, Zimri, murderer of your master?" And he looked up at the window and said, "Who is on my side? Who?" So 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. Then he said, "Throw her down." So they threw her down, and some of her blood splattered on the wall and on the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. And when he had gone in, he ate and drank. Then he said, "Go now. See to this accursed woman and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." So they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than a skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Therefore they came back and told him. And he said, "This is the word of the Lord which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, On the plot of ground at Jezreel dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel shall be as refuse on the surface of the field, in the plot of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, Here lies Jezebel." In this chapter, we're witnessing a change in dynasty in Israel from the 3rd dynasty of Omri to the 4th dynasty of Jehu. Like all the dynastic changes in Israel thus far, this one came violently and as a judgment from the Lord on the sin of the kings of that dynasty. Specifically, in the case of the 3rd dynasty, it was the sins of Ahab and Jezebel, who not only had Naboth killed for a plot of land, but who had the prophets of the Lord killed at various times too. In the days of Jehoram, Ahab's wicked son, that judgment would fall from God, and it would be meted out by Jehu, the next man God anointed king over Israel. In the last lesson, we had Jehu coming to Jehoram and killing him in the same field in Jezreel that Naboth owned. It is here that Jehoram's body was allowed to lay so that his blood could be licked up by the dogs in the fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah back in 1 Kings 21. With Jehoram now dead, Jehu is going to be taking the throne, so it is important for us for a quick look at our timeline. This time period is especially hard to piece together perfectly because of all that is about to happen, but since we know that Jehoram reigned in Israel for 12 years, that will bring our timeline down to about 840 BC. Again, that is an estimate that we can't cross-check as well as we can other dates, because Jehu is not going to be given the usual introduction given to kings, such as in such and such a year of this person, king of Judah, Jehu began to reign. We're told that he reigns for 25 years, but in relation to the year of the reign of the king of Judah, we're not given that. Why? Because Ahaziah, the king of Judah, is about to be killed by Jehu, meaning when Jehu comes to the throne, there technically isn't a king of Judah. And even though we won't see this until chapter 11, after Ahaziah's death, there isn't going to be a king in Judah for about 6 years, because Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, is going to seize the throne, ruling in Judah there until she is later killed for her treachery. Thus, this is the reason that Jehu is likely not given the usual introduction that other kings are, which does make our chronology a little harder to do in this section due to that. Coming to verse 27 now, and we do have Ahaziah, king of Judah, who had been in a neighboring chariot, flee Jehu once he saw Jehoram was killed. As you can see on our map, Ahaziah fled from the Jezreel valley southwards toward Beth-hagen. Jehu pursued him and shot Ahaziah at the ascent of Gur, which is by Ibleam. However, Ahaziah escaped from there alive northwest to Megiddo, after which the text says that he died. Ahaziah's servants, seeing that he was dead, brought his body back to Jerusalem and buried it in his tomb with his fathers in Jerusalem, as had been done with the previous kings of Judah. It is said that Ahaziah began to reign in the 11th year of the reign of Jehoram, king of Israel, while in 2 Kings 8:26 said he began to reign in the 12th year of Jehoram. While this might seem like an issue, we're going to learn a little bit more about the short reign of Ahaziah, the Lord willing, when we study 2 Chronicles, that will show us that he actually had a co-regency with his father that will account for this difference. But for now, what we need to remember about him is that he was an evil king who allowed his evil family to influence him to do evil. Had he not been so close to his family, he wouldn't have been in league with Jehoram. He wouldn't have been visiting Jehoram when Jehu arrived, and thus he might have survived. But he didn't, and the house of David almost would become extinct because of this if it hadn't been for the providence of God. As for Jehu, with Jehoram dead, there was very little standing in his way from claiming the throne of Israel, so he marched into Jezreel. Jezebel, who by this time was the queen mother, heard of his impending arrival, and so she painted her eyes and adorned her head and sat at the window overlooking the gate. What were her intentions? Well, from the way she was dressed, it appears that she was going to try and seduce Jehu in order to spare her life, or perhaps even kill Jehu. But Jehu was having none of that, and asked if there was anybody on his side. And there was, so they would throw Jezebel down from the window. And wouldn't you know it, 2 eunuchs in the palace did as Jehu had asked, causing Jezebel to fall to her death at the wall of Jezreel. Her body was trampled over by Jehu's horses, ensuring that she was truly dead. Now, did these 2 eunuchs do what is right? No, they did not. What they did was murder Jezebel, and even though she was an evil woman, that doesn't mean that any form of punishing her for her wickedness was justified. But hadn't God prophesied that she would die this way? Yes, but that doesn't mean that someone didn't sin by bringing it about. Jesus dying on the cross was prophesied by God too, and yet it was still murder. Just because God prophesies something doesn't make that something righteous. It just means that that is what will happen. Did Jezebel deserve to die for her crimes? Yes, and God allowed that punishment to happen. But that doesn't absolve these men from what they did either, something we need to remember. With Jezebel dead, Jehu came in and ate and drank in the palace. However, because Jezebel was the daughter of royalty, specifically the daughter of the king of the Sidonians, Jehu, probably not wanting to start foreign hostilities with Phoenicia, ordered that Jezebel's body be buried. But there was just one problem. By the time Jehu's servants got there to claim the body, all that was left was her skull, feet, and the palms of her hands. The rest had been eaten by wild dogs. Jehu then remembers that this too was prophesied by the word of the Lord concerning Jezebel through Elijah the prophet, just as Elijah had prophesied against Ahab. Thus, even though Jezebel was a woman of high royalty, having relatives among 3 kingdoms in the region, she would die dishonorably and not even be allowed a burial, so that nobody could come and mourn for her at her grave. But such was the punishment she faced for her egregious acts against God and his prophets. Today, Jezebel's name is still synonymous with evil, and no God-fearing person would ever desire to name their daughter after her, for in all that she did, there is nothing for us to look up to or take away as some sort of silver lining. She was evil, and so the lessons we need to take from her is to avoid the things that she did and walk righteously before God. We'll continue with Jehu's takeover of Israel, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Kings chapter 10, verses 1 to 11, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.